Okay, Toastmasters, members, and guests, think about when was the last time that you cried? Do you know that not all tears are made the same? You have happy or sad tears. You have tears come to your eyes when you chop onions, or maybe if you have allergies, you have tears to come out of your eyes. Did you know that on average, a person makes between 15 and 30 gallons of tears per year? So this made me wonder, where do these tears come from? And what is the purpose of a tear? So today I'm going to be talking about the different tears that come to your eyes and the purpose of these tears and why you shouldn't be ashamed to cry. Let's start with the anatomy of your eyes and your tears. Probably most of us are not medical professionals, so we haven't ever studied the anatomy of the body, let alone the eye. But simply put, the tears are produced in a gland called the lacrimal gland right above your eye. They come into your eye, coating the cornea, the surface of your eye. And then to leave the eye, they go through little holes in your eyes. You might have seen them. They're called puncta. There's one on the top and one on the bottom of your eye. And those eventually get drained into the tear duct through the nose. And then, of course, excess tears that aren't able to go through those ducts come out of your eye, rolling down your cheeks and your face. Now, the structure of the tear itself is not so simple. It's not just salt water. There are actually three layers to a tear. The first layer that's closest to the cornea that coats the cornea of the eye is a mucus layer, and that layer helps the rest of the tear to stick to the eye. Then you have a layer made mostly of water. This water provides nourishment and hydration to the eye, and it protects it from invaders, bacteria, and other irritants to the eye. And then the final layer is made up of an oily layer, and it prevents the evaporation of the tear and also provides a smooth surface for you to look out of and be able to see properly. So these three layers make up the actual tear film of each tear. Now, what you may not have known is that there are three types of tears that come to your eyes on different occasions. First is called a basal tear, then the next is called a reflex tear, and then the third is called an emotional tear. Now, based on the names of these tears, can you guess when or how each of these tears may appear in different situations? I bet you could. The first tear, called the basal tear, is like an everyday tear. These tears are constantly coming to your eye, coating it, protecting your eye from bacteria and dryness. And oftentimes, if you have a problem with these type of tears, for example, one of the layers of the tear is inadequate, then you may have a condition called dry eye, which can include redness in the eye, irritation, inflammation. So these tears are very important. You want to have healthy basal tears in order to have a healthy eye. The next tear is called a reflex tear. And these tears come out when there is an irritant to the eye. Think of when you're chopping onions and the fumes hit your eye and suddenly tears come out and you have to squeeze your eye and stop for a moment. This happens also if you have large particles come into your eye. These tears come in larger amounts in the basal tear and helps to wash out the irritants in order to get rid of it and flush anything out that's irritating the eye in order for it to go back to being healthy. And they also contain more antibodies in this tear than the basal tear in order to fight any additional bacteria that might come from the irritants. So that's called a reflex tear. And finally, the last tier is an emotional tear. And these tears, I'm sure you're familiar with, these come in different emotional states, such as When you're really, really happy, such as lying, laughing, crying emoji we have here, or when you're really, really sad, or maybe if you have some fear or anxiety, you might have emotional tears. Now, these tears contain different ingredients as well. They may contain different proteins, stress hormones, as well as pain relievers. And scientists have determined that these tears may actually contribute to stabilizing your emotional state. So if you've ever had the experience where you've cried from sadness, and after you've cried, you feel a little better, your mood has kind of stabilized, or maybe you've had some pain and you cry and the pain is relieved a little bit, then these tears may help in that stabilizing your mood and also reducing pain. So these tears are not so bad after all. Now, one person thought to look at these tears under a microscope and to see if you can actually tell the difference by looking at different types of tears in a microscope by these images. And what they determined that even though these images are very pretty and cool looking, that even when you compare tears of, different reflex tears or emotional tears, you don't actually see a similarity or difference between the different tears. So even though these images are cool looking, you can't really tell from the microscope what each tear looks like. But in conclusion, I want to say that the tears that come out of your eyes have many purposes. They can protect your eye like the basal tear. They can cleanse and flush out your eye like the reflex tears. And they can stabilize you and release those emotions effectively with the emotional tears. So Toastmasters and guests, I want you to remember that these tears have a purpose and don't be afraid to cry me a river. Thank you.
I am going to evaluate Jasmine's speech. Her project, or rather, yeah, her project was researching and presenting, and this is like a textbook example of it. Give me a second, let me tell myself. This is a textbook example of it. I did not know that tears were so. I guess, I guess everything you can drill down to everything, but I didn't know tears. You could give a presentation on tears. I didn't know there were three types of tears, which is the basal, the reflex, and the emotional. And you did a really good job. One, you did definitely show you were knowledgeable, and you definitely had a good presentation. I like the slide. The first slide was kind of, I guess, if you look at the whole slide, the first slide was kind of like water, but the rest of it was just about tears. But then again, the title of your speech was "Cry Me a River," so that can get a little nitpicky. But yes, you had a really good slide composition. You were very knowledgeable about your research topic. I definitely learned a lot. I did not know about the basal. I thought blinking was just what made our eyes not dry, but it definitely makes sense that it can definitely still be qualified as a tear. That what makes your eye dry and what makes your eyes wet. I did not know there was a mucus layer to tears. Now I'm a little disgusted, but what can I do, right? So, but other than that, I also like the audience participation. There was a bit of a question. It was, I guess, we can't answer. I almost wanted to answer, but I didn't want to break your flow because you had such a nice flow. But I like that as well. If this was an actual talk, then people will actually talk to you, talk back. Again, I don't know if you made some of the clip art yourself or you just were lucky, but I like especially for the basal, like you were trying to show the composition of the tears. So you had like the layers, you had the cornea, I believe, and then you had the mucus, and then the water, and then I forget the last part of it, the last layer, but there was another layer. And I like the conclusion a lot. I like the way you wrapped it up. I also like the slides. There was just bulleted points. Like you made sure that you kind of touched on what you went back, what you talked about. You touched on everything like on a high level. So it was pretty good. And if I had to give a criticism, I would say is one I would borrow a criticism I got from Nico from the last slide I did. So I guess that was kind of fortuitous. Is that on some of the slides, not a lot of them, like on the minority of them, there were longer sentences, and you definitely touched upon the sentences more than the sentences were an introduction. But I guess it would be better if you were able to shorten them. But again, it's kind of nitpicky. But yeah, there were longer sentences, and I feel like shorter sentences are okay. And you definitely had shorter sentences, but some of them were like I don't want to say compound sentences because I don't know if that's like. But yeah, there were longer sentences on some of them. But overall, you research on tiers and then you present it on tiers. So yeah, great speech. Another one for the books. Thank you, Jocelyn, for teaching us what our tiers are made of and discussing me a little, I guess. But yeah, thank you guys.